Check 1212. It's the Y2K collector, and the PlayStation 6 is going to be patch perfect. And that is a pun that was intended. And the reason why I'm saying that is because we're already getting rumors about some of the technology behind the PlayStation 6. And to me, that's an indicator that I think people are already looking and moving past the PlayStation 5, which in a lot of ways has been a failure in terms of customer satisfaction and gamers getting what they expected to get out of this current generation of console gaming. And so for me, it reminds me of how much more culturally significant the PlayStation 4 was. And it also lets me know that I probably shouldn't sell my PlayStation 4. And I think the same could be said for anyone who's kind of teetering on the idea of whether or not they should sell their PlayStation 4. I believe that if you are a PlayStation 4 owner, you should hang on to it. Hang on to your PlayStation 4 at least for the next 2 to 3 years while we see what develops and what happens with this PlayStation 6 for a lot of reasons. The primary one being that a lot of these PlayStation 4 games are going to get cheaper and cheaper as, you know, game stores like GameStop and other mom and pop shops start to, kind of liquidate some of these titles that they're no longer able to sell or just aren't selling as well because a lot of people have moved on to the PlayStation 5. Right now, we're in a current market where you couldn't give your PlayStation 4 away. A lot of people have been trying to move away from their PlayStation 4. They've been trying to sell their PS4s to get into the PlayStation 5 and start building a collection or start playing in that ecosystem. And I don't blame you, right? Like, if you are a person who's, concentrating heavily on graphics and frame rate and things like that, you're obviously going to get it's going to feel better to play a game like Ghost of Tsushima on PlayStation 5 than it will be to play it on PlayStation 4. However, there are a lot of niche titles and indie titles and kind of like those, non AAA titles that were released on the PlayStation 4 that I still think make it, a worthwhile console to keep in your collection and actually continue to collect for or even build off of, just because it might be a little cheaper than trying to dive into the PlayStation 5, where a lot of the games on the PS5 are $70, $75, things of that nature. There's still a ton of games in the PlayStation 4 library that you can get brand new for under $20. A lot of these games might even be $15, $10. And then if you increase that price limit to $30, well, there's a whole world that gets opened up to you to where you can take advantage of some really great games. I think the other really good thing about hanging on to your PlayStation 4 is that I feel like the PlayStation 4 is the last console that you'll be able to play a lot of the re-released or remastered games from prior PlayStation generations. What am I talking about? Games like Shadow of the Colossus, games like Rez, games like, Odin Sphere, games like, Mega Man Legacy, Medieval, a lot of these games that were originally released on the PlayStation 1 or even PlayStation 2 got a re-release on the PlayStation 4. And if you're a person who wants to play these games with the best visual fidelity, with the best graphics, the PlayStation 4 is really going to be kind of like the last system that you'll be able to play these games if you're playing them physically, right? I'm sure you'll be able to download some of these games on the PlayStation 5 if you have access to the PlayStation 5 network. But I'm talking about those who collect physical discs. A lot of these games, I think their last stop was on the PlayStation 4. I don't think they continued, remastering these games onto the PlayStation 5. Again, games like Odin Sphere, that's a game that we saw on the PlayStation 2, we saw it on the PlayStation 3 and the PlayStation 4, and it's pretty much going to end there. Games like Dragon's Crown, that's going to end on the PlayStation 4. And I think that it's that makes the PlayStation 4 still worth hanging on to for a gamer like me, because I like vanillaware games like that. I like some of the older games that got a re-release on a more modern console. Even when you think about games like Infamous Second Son, games like that, those are, the Yakuza series. a lot, certain Yakuza games are really going to be, their lifeline is ending on the PlayStation 4. The PlayStation 5 is moving on to different IP, moving on to different titles. And so, I feel like the PlayStation 4 is probably going to be that last console where you can kind of soak up just a little bit of that like retro nostalgia. And again, a lot of really great indie titles, we saw them on the PlayStation 4. Even some games that there are a lot of games that I still haven't seen move to the PlayStation 5. I don't know if they'll get a release on the PlayStation 5. When you think about games like the Attack on Titan games, when you think about Berserk and the Band of the Hawk, if I'm wrong and these games have been given a physical release on the PlayStation 5, then you can let me know down in the comments. I know that a lot of these games can be downloaded digitally to the PlayStation 5. I get it. I'm talking about physical releases for these games kind of ended on the PlayStation 4. So for that reason, I think the PlayStation 4 is worth hanging on to, just because there are still a lot of games and titles that make the PlayStation 4 worth it. Especially if you're a person who's not interested in going back to the PlayStation 3, or you're not interested in going back to the PlayStation 2, and you kind of just you're starting your collection from the PlayStation 4 and you're thinking about moving forward. I mean, I think it's a great console to do that with. I haven't really collected for the PlayStation 4 in quite some time. I stopped really collecting for the PlayStation 4, I would say probably around the beginning of the year. So I haven't picked up many PlayStation 4 titles. I probably could count on one hand how many PS4 games I picked up this year. I've probably only picked up 3, that being Prototype, Biohazard Bundle, I think Marvel vs. Capcom Collection. That might have been it. I really did not get many PlayStation 4 games, and that's because I've been concentrating primarily on retro throughout the majority of this year. Same thing with the Switch. I haven't really bought many Switch games either. The bulk of my game pickups this year have been PS2, PS3, Xbox 360, and GameCube. That's really the bulk of what I've picked up. And then of course, a lot of NES. I picked up a bunch of NES this year. Super Nintendo, I picked up a good amount of that. And then Sega Genesis. But moving into 2025, now that I feel like I've gotten the bulk of the retro games that I want, I don't really know if there's a lot of other retro games I'm interested in. 2025 might be a year where I start to go back to this current generation of Switch games, PlayStation 4, and even PlayStation 5 as we look towards the PlayStation 6. But I think, now that I have a PlayStation 5, I've got my disc drive, I can actually see what this current gen has to offer from a gameplay experience, because I've never even played a PlayStation 5 game, so I couldn't even speak to that. But I almost sold my PlayStation 4. I do have 2 PS4s. One I had actually bought, but then one I had gotten as a gift. I actually have a sealed PlayStation 4 down there. I haven't even touched that one yet, but this is the one that I was using to play games like Ghost of Tsushima and Spider-Man and stuff. So I think I'm actually going to unbox this again and set it back up and hook it up and kind of dive into a little bit of PS4 gameplay. But it's really going to be interesting to see what happens as we move closer to the next generation of PlayStation, because I really don't feel like PlayStation 5 made a dent culturally outside of the price gouging and the scalping that went on during 2020. But let me know if I'm completely off here. I'm interested to know your thoughts. It's the Y2K Collector. I'll catch you in the next video. Take it easy.